Hello and welcome everyone to our 2025 Fall Series webinar. And today we're going to be looking at some newer features in Zoho CRM so you can get a taste of what they look like and the kind of things that they can do. Now, my name is Grayson. I'm the technical sales engineer here at Topline. So I work with both our technical and sales teams on things like demonstrations, trainings, and customer projects across all the products we support, like Dynamics, Zoho, and HubSpot. I'm also involved in our internal product Symphony Sync in the development, customer support, and content creation. Now, during today's webinar, we're going to go over sort of 5 main things. The first is going to be email intelligence, which is a whole suite of email features, but we're primarily going to be focused on email emotion, sentiment, and intent. We'll also take a look at some functionality where we can see the best time and mode of contact for any given person in the system, and that's going to be built on any previous interaction history we have. So we can target our timings of contact or modes of contact based on what works best with that particular customer or client. We'll also take a look at predictive record scoring, which is a way we can set up different scores using ZIA, where we can rank records based on a couple of factors like the likelihood they convert, how likely we need to follow up with them, and how engaged they are with our current business process and dealings. We'll also take a look at data enrichment, which is a way we can help populate data into the system just by only utilizing information from a couple of key fields on records, such as company names or websites. And then finally, we'll take a look at intelligent character recognition, which is some new functionality in Zoho that allows us to basically build a template out using some training images and create Zoho records using data from images we then upload into Zoho. So some pretty cool functionality there. Now, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into our demonstration today. Now, during our demonstration, if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those in the chat box. We do have a lot of content to cover today, so we might not be able to answer your questions live during the webinar. However, if you have any questions, we will of course follow up with you after the webinar to make sure those are answered so you know how you can best utilize these features and functionality. Now, the first thing I want to do a quick review on is just going to be the email intelligence functionality, and we'll quickly take a look at what it looks like and how you can set it up. So with email intelligence, like I was mentioning, we have basically 3 main factors in which we can have ZIA determined based on the contents of the email. The first is going to be the sentiment, which is simply a positive, negative, or neutral emotion based on the content of any given email. Now, all of these features are going to be utilizing ZIA, which is Zoho's AI assistant, and ZIA will be combing the contents of that email to try to best determine the sentiment of that email. So overall, was the email positive? Was the email negative? Or did it have a neutral tone? We'll also see emotion. So emotion is going to be a set list of different emotions that ZIA can help you identify based on the contents of an email. And those are going to be things like happiness, enthusiasm, gratitude, trust, confusion, discontentment, frustration, or just an overall neutral emotion. And then finally, we will have intent. Now, intent is a little bit special and different than the other 2 categories, as Zoho does have a couple of out-of-the-box options for intent, and those are basically going to be what it's trying to determine the intent of the email is. So is it something like a complaint? Are they asking about a specific product? Or maybe they need some sort of clarification on a question they might have. Now, the cool thing when it comes to intent is that we do have the ability to make custom intents where we can help trigger ZIA to sort of identify intents based on areas of our business that might not necessarily be related to every area of business. So we can really focus on ZIA into training to identify those specific intents as they relate to our business. Now, all of these factors of email intelligence can be found on the email subgrid in any given record. You can also find previous intents, emotions, and sentiments when you're looking to create a new email and send a new email utilizing the Zoho email client. Or if you're looking at your inbox, if you have your inbox connected with Zoho, when you're viewing those emails directly in Zoho, you're able to see those same sentiment, emotions, and intent on those emails as they exist in Zoho. Now with that, we'll jump into Zoho and see sort of what one of those, or how the setup would look like for these different areas of email intelligence. Now, all the different functions of Zoho we're going to talk about today are going to be found under your setup menu. And the first thing we're going to talk about, again, is going into those email intelligence settings, which can be found under our ZIA section, and then communication. Now, when we go to that ZIA section in communication, there are a couple of tabs here, but I'm going to focus on this email intelligence. Now, like I mentioned, email intelligence does have a lot of features that sort of come with it, such as the ability to summarize emails, create activities based on the contents of the emails, and even have email subjects suggested for you. However, the three we're going to focus on today are going to be that intent, sentiment, and emotion. Now with sentiment, again, that is either the positive, negative, or neutral overall sentiment of the email. This is simply just a feature you can toggle on and off, whether you'd like that visibility on any given email. Now, what's special about this sentiment is you can also turn on notifications for email sentiment from a specific contact. So if a potential customer emails you multiple times with some sort of negative sentiment in those emails, you can actually have ZIA notify you that some customer has responded negatively multiple times in a row. And that'll appear in your ZIA notifications, which can be found down here in your client. We'll also have emotion. And again, emotion is going to be ZIA trying to identify some following emotions, which are either happiness, enthusiasm, gratitude, trust, confusion, discontentment, frustration, or neutral. And again, it's important to note with these, when it comes to the emotions ZIA detects, this is going to be the extent of the emotions. We do not have the ability to create additional emotions. We are going to be using this default out-of-the-box set of emotions that Zoho provides with us. Now, just like sentiment, we can just turn this feature on and off utilizing this toggle here. Now, it's important to note when we toggle these off, they do get toggled for the organization as a whole. So when you turn these features either on and off, that is true for every user. Now, with intent here, just like the other two features, we can toggle it on or off. However, it does have its own dedicated tab right here for email intent. Now, this email intent is where we can see those 4 out-of-the-box system intents. So purchase, complaint, query, or request. But what we can do is we can actually create custom intents where, again, we can sort of narrow in on specific things as they relate to our business process that we'd like to get a glimpse into when we're looking at any given email. Now, when we go to create one of these new intents, Zoho provides 2 different methods that we can use to help train Zoho on how to identify these intents. And with that, if we go to create a new intent, we can either create it with sample data or without sample data. And what this is referring to is basically using existing previous emails that a customer might have sent you or ones that you might have come up with as examples as a way for Zoho to determine what the content of this type of intent should be looking like. So for instance, if you are someone who is in something like legal services, maybe they're interested, or you have a couple different services such as working with an attorney, or maybe you're someone who's authorized to be a notary, you can have and create intents where you can designate those emails as belonging to one or the other forms of those business. Now, again, if we're using with sample data, we will need to provide up to 25 emails for that intent creation, in which you can either enter the emails or upload them as a file. But if we go to create one of these intents without sample data, what Zoho will ask us to do is provide up to 5 keywords that ZIA will look for and search for in an email to help align that email with one of these intents that we're creating. So I've just created this simple feedback intent in which I'm hoping to look for if a customer is providing me feedback in an email. And with this, I'm specifically looking for keywords such as suggestion, opinion, improvement, recommendation, or evaluation as the keywords to trigger that this email is about some sort of feedback that I should potentially be looking into. Now you can have many different custom intents, and you can turn each intent on and off independently, as well as see the overall accuracy of how these intents are performing and the total quantity of emails that are belonging to this intent after Zia has started to identify them. So again, email intelligence is a lot of cool, it's a whole suite of features. So I highly recommend checking out these features to see what might work best for you. Now it's important to note that this functionality is available in the professional or greater editions. So whether you're professional, enterprise, or part of some other plans such as CRM Plus or Zoho One, you'll have access to this functionality. The next thing I'd like to take a look at is also going to be found under this Zia communication, and that's going to be our best time and mode of contact. And that's just going to be found under that best time to contact tab right under that communication section. Now what best time to contact does is it'll scan the communication history that you have with either a customer or a lead, and based on that communication history, try to recommend you a time in which you might want to reach out with the future, as well as the potential best mode of contact to reach out to one of those potential clients or customers. So as an example, if you have a customer who is very responsive to your calls and will pick up every Friday because that's their slow business day, Zoho will look at your previous communication history, all your closed activities, and see that you have the most completed calls on a Friday. And with that, it'll give you specific time slots. So if all your calls have been happening at, let's say, 10 in the morning, or maybe 11 in the morning, but none in the afternoon, it'll recommend you specific time slots. In the same way, it'll also take a look at your previous email history for any emails that have been tracked into the system. And based on the responses or when an email has been opened or clicked, it'll take that information to try to provide you the best time in which you could email a client or potential customer in order for them to have the highest likelihood of responding. Now, we'll take a look at what this looks like on any given contact record. So I just have myself as a contact record, for example, here. And if we go down to our closed activities section, you'll notice that I have a pretty extensive call history, but not as much history in my emails. So if I scroll up to the top of our record here, you'll notice I have this best time to contact section. And this will appear for everyone if you do have that best time and mode of contact setting turned on, and it'll appear at the top of the record, just above the field details belonging to this record. Now what this does is you can see here again, we have the best time to call and the best time to email, but you'll notice that we don't have any information currently about the best time to call or email. So what this is doing is this is actually the best time or contact when it comes to a specific date. So currently we're looking at today, and based on our previous communication history, we haven't really had many successful attempts with communication on any given Tuesday. However, if we go to tomorrow, which is going to be a Wednesday, it turns out we actually do have a pretty robust history when it comes to communication. So Zoho is actually recommending me 3 times that might be successful based on my previous points in which I've called them or they've called me in the history. Now with each of these sections, you'll notice that we have a star belonging to a specific time of day. Now the star corresponds to the sort of highest likelihood in which this call might be successful, and then the time corresponds to those specific times of day. And generally, these are going to be in 30-minute increments. Now, if I want to actually go to create a call in one of these given times, what I can actually do is I can click on one, and I have the ability to either create a task or create a call for that given time period. So if I'd like to create a call at 10 a.m., I can click create call, and that's going to automatically populate the next given day based on the calendar day we selected at that given time. And it'll also pre-fill some information for us. So the call type, it'll pre-fill the subject for us, and again, create those relationships to this existing record. So it does help us sort of save time when we create calls. And again, it helps guide us towards the best time in which to contact based on that previous engagement history. So it's a pretty useful feature, although it is important to note that if there is not much conversation history to be had with a particular customer or potential client, Zia won't be able to help you identify a best time or mode to contact. So this functionality really works best if you have an extensive communication history with any particular record in the system. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at is going to be scoring rules. Now, scoring rules can be found back under our settings, and they're going to be under automation and then scoring rules. Now, what scoring rules allow us to do is assign a numerical value to a record based on certain criteria. Now, we'll primarily be focusing on the automated Zia scoring, where Zia is going to try to build you a model and build a scoring sort of rule for you based on the data in your system. But we'll also take a brief overview of what manual scoring is, which is sort of the alternative to Zia scoring. Now, with manual scoring, the way our manual scoring works is that we're basically going to tell Zoho to give a record a score based on specific information in fields on the record. So for instance, if I'm looking at something like a lead, if I'm trying to prioritize healthcare, maybe I'd like to give them a higher score if their industry is healthcare, or a lower score if they don't have industry at all. So again, utilizing filters and criteria on a given record, we can build a manual score where we tie points to any given filter combination in order to add points to this overall record score. Now, the alternative, which we're going to take a look at, is going to be Zia scoring. So we'll go ahead and create a new scoring rule. Now, with our Zia scoring rules, we'll have a couple different types of Zia scores. We can also select a module that we're going to be focusing our score on. So you will need to select a specific module, such as leads, accounts, contacts, or even any custom tables or modules that you've created in the system. And then we'll also need to target it at a specific layout or all the layouts you have for that given module. Now, once you create your rule, this is where we can start to measure for our contacts, and we can select one of the 5 different types of scoring rules that Zia has. So with our scoring rules, you'll notice we're actually missing one here. With our scoring rules, we can actually only set up one scoring rule for each given type of measure in the system. So I actually already have a engagement score set up where I'm trying to gauge the contact history with a particular customer, so I cannot create another one. But when it comes to our scoring rules, we'll have sort of 2 different types, and those are going to be those that require data and previous information in the system in order to help generate a score for you, and those that do not require any data in the system to try to generate a score. So for those that require data, we're going to have our field attribute score. And this is where the score is going to be automatically calculated based on the attributes or properties on specific fields in the record. And it helps to try to assess relevance or completeness or accuracy of the data in any given category we set up. So for instance, you might have a lead quality field that could be assigned a score based on things like where the lead source is, what the lead industry is, the lead size, and what contact information is on that lead record. And a high score might indicate that this lead is well qualified with comprehensive data. We'll also have our conversion score. Again, this is another one of those that does require data in the system to train off of. And that's going to be more for a customer journey type of use case. So things like leads and deals, where we're trying to predict the likelihood that this lead is going to convert based on our history with leads of similar factors. So for instance, if we have, or we're targeting something like the healthcare industry, and that has historically performed very well, Zoho might sort of assign a higher conversion score to that new lead. However, if we are working with something like manufacturing, and historically our company does not have great success with our manufacturing clients, maybe Zoho will give that lead a lower conversion score. We'll also have our 3 types of records that do not require data. So that is going to be follow-up score, in which we are going to capture the different sort of outbound signals to analyze the effectiveness of any follow-up actions. So things like assessing the timeliness, relevance, or impact of their follow-up communications. So for instance, after a sales call is over, we might take into account things like how long it took us to send a follow-up message, whether a follow-up meeting was arranged, if any promised information or resources were actually delivered, and that high follow-up score would indicate that we are proactive and efficient with following up. We'll also have our health score here. Again, this is another one that does not require any data. And this is where we're going to sort of represent the overall value and health of any given relationship based on a holistic view of all the data on that record. So things like customer satisfaction, their usage patterns, payment history, and any things like support interactions. Now, this is more relevant for those modules that don't sort of have a life cycle or a journey approach. And we're taking into consideration basically every touch point, such as, again, things like what they've purchased, their deals, the modes of communication, if they've raised any tickets, what campaigns they belong to. So one example is if we're having a subscription-based service, we might want to include factors like how often they're using our service, what features of our service they've adopted, and their history of support tickets as they've raised for the product we're offering them. Our final thing is going to be a contact engagement score. So this is one of those scores I do already have created. And in this case, with our contact engagement scores, what we're doing is try to generate a score based on data from that module and related modules, which is going to be things like calls, emails, meetings, or other methods or modes of communication. So what we're doing with this engagement score is trying to consider the level of interest they have that's being sourced from any of those incoming signals. So for example, we might want to calculate a score by how often they're engaging with our social media posts. And with that score, a higher score indicates that they are more engaged with our social media. Now, once we have created a module and we have our module activated, we'll be able to see that score over on that record. So where best time to contact and best mode to contact was over here on the left-hand side, we will see our ZIA scores over here on the right-hand side. Now, if you have multiple different scores set up for a given record type, you will be able to use these arrow keys to navigate to your other scores. However, if you only have one score set up for your contact or your module type, so I only have the engagement score set up for my contact records, you'll just be given that engagement score here. Now with this, we'll be able to see a score, which is going to be utilizing a percentage from 0 to 100 and recommends that this would most likely need improvement. And we can also see a scorecard, which is going to show us all of the contributing factors to why ZIA or Zoho has related this contact engagement score so poorly. So for instance, we have a poor call history with this particular customer. We have a poor email response from them. We don't have a lot of meeting history. They haven't interacted with our social posts, and we haven't really done much with their record in the past 30 days. So based on all of those different factors, that's what's contributing to our very low score of only a 10%. Now, these scores are also housed on the record as fields, so they can be seen in the record view, which means they can also be utilized when you're creating things like views. So you can create a view, in this case, for all our records with a low engagement score as an indicator that these are the records that we probably need to engage with in some sort of manner, whether that be calling them up, scheduling a meeting, maybe we need to send them some new advertising materials because they haven't interacted with any of our advertising. It'll help guide you to the records that might need the most attention. Now, the next feature we're going to touch on is going to be our data enrichment. So data enrichment is a functionality that allows us to, using some core trigger fields, help fill out the information on any given record. Now I'll jump over into one of our different data enrichment types. So we'll look at what data enrichment might look like on an account record, and we'll see what information we can get. Now, this data enrichment is pulling all the data from Zoho itself, where Zoho has basically an internal database of a lot of different customers, clients, leads that can be used for data enrichment. Now, this enrichment is sort of keyed off and triggered off a couple of different core identifying fields as they might relate to a particular customer. So things like we need to know the specific name of the company, or we need to have that company's website. And those are going to be the trigger fields for whether or not Zoho can help us enrich data. We'll also have a field mapping. So on the left-hand side here is where we can see all the fields that Zoho has to offer or that can be enriched for any given record. So for an account, we can grab things like their Skype, their Facebook, any other social media links, things like their employee count, their annual revenue, their size, when they went into business, where their locations are, who their CEO is. So we can pull all this information onto our records. Now, this is all the information that Zoho has available, but of course, we might not necessarily have fields that line up as a place to store that information. So we can actually select one of the fields we have created in the system already as the location in which we'd like to place Zoho's data. So for instance, we do want to place the organization over into the account name field if we don't have that filled out already. And things like we want to place that company's primary contact number over into the phone number field on the account record. Now, of course, you don't need all of these fields filled out or to be using all of these fields. However, this is basically the full quantity of data that Zoho can offer you if you'd like to enrich your records. Now, if we would like to enrich records, we can either do that upon creation of a new record or editing of an existing record. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new account here. And what I'm going to do is I am only going to fill out the website. So I'm going to fill out www.toplineresults for Topline Results' website. And you'll notice once I fill out that information and I save that field, we'll now have this enrich data button that appears at the top of our record. When we click this enrich data, this is going to pull up this data enrichment screen where Zoho is going to walk us through basically all the information. It's going to try to pull over and enrich for us based on that mapping that we had set up for that particular module. So we can see we don't have an existing account name, so Zoho is going to bring us over the account name, and it's going to bring us things like the billing information, the phone number, the description, and even bring over an image for us that we can use. Now, if you are enriching a record with existing information, you can also toggle whether or not you'd actually like to pull over this information, or if you'd just like to use the existing information as you already had it in the system. So this is a pretty powerful feature that allows you to quickly fill out information, again, based on some basic key identifiers for a specific company. Now, the last functionality I want to talk about today is going to be intelligent character recognition. So this is a new feature, and this is also going to be under the ZIA suite of features over under this Vision section right here. And once we're in Vision, we're going to click on this intelligent character recognition tab. And what this functionality allows you to do is basically use images as a source to populate data in the system. Now, intelligent character recognition currently is focused around basically trying to input information from a certain type or format of records as they might appear in pictures. So for instance, if you very recently visited a trade show and you have a lot of pictures of different visitors' trade show badges, and you'd like to create records for all those pictures that you have of your trade show badges, you can set up an intelligent character recognition model for that trade show where we can train our model based on the pictures of those visitor badges so that we can actually just create new records when we go to upload one of those pictures. So I'll go ahead and enter in my existing rule and we'll take a look how it works. So with our model, what we're going to do is we're actually going to upload images. So for instance, here, I just have an image from Alex, who attended the trade show we also attended, which is going to be Trade Tech Expo 2025. And what we're doing is we're basically creating boxes around the different fields that are coming from this image. So for instance, the headshot from the trade show badge might go to the lead image field on our record. We'll have Alex and the box around Alex be used as to help identify where the information for our first name is being held. And we can see that Novatech Solutions is going to be the name of the company. Business Development Manager is going to go over towards the name of the title of this lead. Alex Morgan at Novatech is going to go over to the email. We'll have his phone number go to the phone field. And then we'll have the Trade Tech Expo 2025 go over to the description field. And what's going to happen is when we go to create a new lead in the system, we'll actually have the option to upload one of those images and utilize this training model that we've just created as the source for how Zoho should map out the data in the image in order to place it into fields on your newly created record. So if you would like to create a new record utilizing this intelligent character recognition, once you have this functionality set up, you can do that from your lead view. If you go to create lead and click the more drop-down menu and create from image. And here, if we're able to select an image, if we have one of our examples to upload, Zoho will again parse that image based on the model we've trained it with in order to try to fill out that information for that new record. I'd just like to thank you so much for attending our webinar today, and I hope you learned something useful that you can look to implement in your own Zoho system.